Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Think about such things.
No or not. Do you know what other sister churches celebrating today? It just happened coincidentally. I don't think Abuna arranged it or the group arranged it. What is today's a feast that's being celebrated by our sister churches? The Catholic Church, the Anglican Church. It's the conversion of St. Paul. They celebrate the feast of his conversion on January 25th. And it was quite the conversion. The name Saul is a Hebrew name, and it means what? Anybody knows? Anybody know what Saul means? It's asked for or prayed for. That's the name of Saul. And Abuna, you're joining. I'm just. This was just the introduction. What's a cool? We'll jump there. So, the calling on St. Paul, his life was never promised to be an easy one. His mission and his missionary work was never going to be an easy one. And he knew that. And for someone to speak with that level of joy, not just in his message to the Philippians, I mean, every epistle he wrote had a message and had something that it addressed. But you never miss the joy and the love he has for Christ, no matter the circumstances, no matter what was he going through. And actually in the book of Acts, when God talked to Ananias, when he lost his vision and he was led to the city of Damascus, God told him this. And I want you to really pay attention to the words. And he told him, but the Lord said to Ananias, go, this man is my chosen instrument. And I wanna bring everything to your names. Mark, Jackie, Phoebe. This man, this woman, this young man, this young woman is my instrument. And we need to do a self-assessment. This man is my instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and their kings, and to the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. And when you first read, I will show him, it's kind of a payback, for what he did to my church. No, but I will show him how much to suffer, but to be in love and to be joyful. How much to really enjoy the suffering for the sake of Christ. You remember when St. John and St. Peter, after the resurrection, went and they were teaching in the temple, and they took them and they gave them the lashes, and they told them never speak of the name of Christ, of Jesus Christ. And they told them, we cannot not speak. We cannot hold it back. And it says in the book of Acts, and they lived joyfully that they were worthy to what? Be persecuted or go through this for Christ's sake. That's the same kind of suffering. St. Paul accepted the invitation, and people usually crawl to the throne of Jesus in desperate needs of healing, and St. Paul was no different than any of them. He really needed that healing. And I think every one of us standing here today, no matter what his spiritual or her spiritual stature, in desperate need of Christ. In desperate need of Christ. He needed some healing. He had a stony heart. And I asked myself, do I have that stony heart? He persecuted the church tremendously. He witnessed the killing, the stoning of the first Christian, the first martyr, St. Stephen. And St. Paul went through so many trials, including stoning. He was stoned. They said in the book of Acts, there's an indication that he died twice. lashes, imprisonment, shipwrecked, staying in the sea for days, not knowing his fate. And all of this, and during all of this suffering, he reminds us that Jesus also endured for all of us, for all the broken souls, just to reconcile us with God. St. Paul, when he started his missionary work, he was in his 30s, and he was martyred in his 60, around 67. And for 30 years, maybe to be exact, 31 years, he did not stop. Did not stop. No matter what were the circumstances. This is a map of his 4 missionary trips. But by no means, this is all that St. Paul did. This is a fraction of what he did. We think we know where he went and all 4 missionary trips. Actually, no map that will tell you exactly where did he go. But I know, and you know, when you read his zeal for Christ, his love for Christ, he went and knocked on every door. No matter what was on the other side, persecution, danger, he knocked on every door. And for 31 years, he was fighting for one thing. And that one thing, that he wanted people to experience the Christ that he loves. The Christ that loved him first. He was a missionary to the whole world. Actually, at that time, he went to the known world at that time. Maybe not towards Egypt, but St. Mark came to us. So, but that other side, from Minor Asia and Europe and Jerusalem, he went that far. You know, he was beheaded as a martyr. And you know when we celebrate his martyrdom? The feast of what? The Apostle. On what day? July 12th. And that we celebrate his martyrdom, and who else? Same day? St. Peter. And it's ironic. One was beheaded and the other one was crucified upside down. One was beheaded, and the reason it's told, the reason he was beheaded, because he was a Roman citizen. And Roman citizens at that time, the humility of crucifixion was not giving their status, even if they were worthy of the punishment of death. And St. Peter was his famous request that he didn't even want to be like Christ. He wanted to be crucified upside down. In the prison, or during his imprisonment, in that second missionary trip where he visited the Philippians, he wrote 4 epistles. He wrote to the Ephesians, the Colossians, Philemon, and then by the hand of Titus, and then the letter to the Philippians was delivered by, you know, by whom? So in your booklet you have the whole book, and it's only 4 short chapters. If you read it a couple of times or three times before you leave, it leave a good impression on you. Epaphroditus is the one who delivered the message of the epistle to the Philippians, and he came to Rome to visit St. Paul, bringing help from the Philippians, and that had a really strong impact on St. Paul. That the people in Philippi, that they just entered the faith, they can be empathic with St. Paul. And they didn't just send them help there, they sent them help in Corinthians as well, where he was there. And that left a really great impact on him. And you know, the imprisonment, it was more of like a house arrest. And it's known at that time from historical data that they were tied to a Roman guard. So it was a house arrest, but he is tied to a guard at all times. He cannot leave, he cannot come, just that house, and then he needs to provide for himself, his food. If not, then he will just perish. It was towards the end of his imprisonment in Rome, around year 61, 62. So it was very close to before his martyrdom. And he knew that he's going to go visit them. Epaphroditus got sick during that visit when he went with help of St. Paul, and he took ill, and that was delayed. So in his epistle, you can see that he's actually assuring them that he was not delayed for any other reason, that he was sick. St. Paul ministered to the Philippians during the second missionary trip, as I said, spending about 3 months in the city. The ministry at the Philippians marked St. Paul's entrance into Macedonia, and you know the famous story that he was in another region, and in a dream someone told him, cross to us to Macedonia, because God wanted him to go and preach the gospel or the good news over there. The whole Philippians evangelism started by two families, Lydia and who else? You remember? The who? The jailer. You remember there was an earthquake, all the doors opened, he was about to kill himself, he heard St. Paul's voice and said, do not hurt yourself, nobody left. And then he took him to his house, he told him about Christ, he baptized the whole entire household, and then the governor of Philippi learned that he was a Roman citizen, and he let him go free, but he told him he needs to leave the city. These historical data are really important so you know the kind of work that St. Paul did over there. Abuna, you want to take it from there? I don't want him to keep. I start like they're getting tired. They're getting.
Do you want him to stop?
No.
No. That's not fair. I know he's your Abuna. Work with me, please. Consider me your Abuna for the next 2 days. As we know that he didn't write to the Philippians, St. Paul, because of a crisis, but because of a appreciation, huge appreciation. No other church did to him what the Philippians did. And he was really touched by that. And I think any one of us, when we experience that kind of hand that's being reached, someone reached to you during crises or during troubles or hardships, sometimes those are the moments that you won't forget, because they're at your weakest point, and that help will never be forgotten. And that's how St. Paul appreciated the Philippians. Joy and rejoice was repeated about 16 times in 4 short chapters in this epistle, and you can tell that he was just overwhelmed. Someone would ask, how can you be on a house arrest? And I don't know if you can imagine the condition, whether it was hot or cold, food, just being tied in prison, and talk about joy, even if someone helped you. It's really hard. It's very hard. It goes against the odds. But our Christ is against the odds. In the Philippians, we read the most beautiful verses that you hear being repeated, and I think many of you, if not all of you, repeat it and know it. He who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Jesus Christ. To live is Christ and to die is gain. I can do all things through him who strengthened me. So many of these beautiful verses that we keep repeating. It came in the epistle to the Philippians. St. Paul took them directly to Jesus. The Philippians, he totally denied himself. He covered himself with Jesus. He put on Christ. And that's why the Philippians were such a strong church. They get to see Christ in his actions and his words. St. Paul wrote that he poured out his life as an offering for the sake of Christ, leading him to great joy. How can someone pour out his life, give up his life for someone to believe in Christ and still feel that level of joy. If you want to read more about the three journeys, the first three journeys of St. Paul, the last one was the one they call it the Pauline Passion, where he was going for his death. And he knew that that was the end, the Pauline Passion. But you can read it in the book of Acts 13:14, first trip, 15:17, second, 18:20, book of Acts is the third trip. We're not going to go through a lot of details, but he was accompanied with his first trip by Barnabas, and they went to his home country. He was from Cyprus, so they went to the Jews in Cyprus, and then he went to Asia Minor. He visited a few places, and then he came back. It was the shortest trip, and you can see it's the yellow dotted line. He didn't do the full circle that he would eventually do. He visited Cyprus, Perga, Anatolia, modern day it's Turkey. Most of these were in Turkey at that time: Antioch, Konya, Lystra, and Derbe. All of these cities, I had some pictures, but I didn't put it on a PowerPoint, but maybe we can do a slideshow at the end. He sent his best friend to them as a way to comfort them, and it was Saint Timothy, the young bishop. And he was the son of a Greek friend of St. Paul, and he took him under his wing. He taught him everything. And you can see in the letters to the Philippians, he said, "Me and my brother Timothy." He put him right next to him. And St. Timothy was to visit them, to bring him good news, to bring him the assurance that they're really still doing well, and promising them that he's going to visit again. In his second trip, he extended it a little bit, where he visited the Philippians from Macedonia, and next to Macedonia, he went a little further in Europe, and then went back to Antioch, his third missionary. He went to the Galatians, Phrygia, went to Ephesus again. Again, he goes, he preached the gospel of Christ, and then usually the trip would take about 3 years, go back to the home base at Antioch, come back and keep visiting those places. And if there's a new city that he can visit, or he has the opportunity to visit, he will visit again and will support him with letters. There was always the Christians in that city or town. They bring him some news, and then he responds based on the news with his epistles. He wrote almost half of the New Testament. The message of the Philippians, it's all about joy, as I said. He weaves a lot of ideas in the message, and I think we're going to get into it. And the source of joy. Abuna, I don't want to talk a lot. I'm going to keep going. So, what's a this is supposed to be Abuna's, not mine.
So Abuna had a little story. I have a little story as well that I'll start with. So Abuna was speaking about how I was teaching him the backspace button on the keyboard. I don't think that was what that was. I think I was teaching him Control-Alt-Delete. My story with Abuna is we would, and this is just kind of putting us out there. It's a deep bromance, if I can say it. We would have phone calls at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Seriously, and we would actually read the Psalms to each other, and we would read Philippians, and we would read passages to one another, and we would talk about how deep the meanings behind these stories were, and we would talk about what our favorite songs were. And bromance, I'm telling you, and this was a good foundation for us. this was something that was very special, and it was something that, again, we remember back, and maybe, I don't know if he forgot them, but I didn't. And so it's something, I'm saying this also for you to be able to meditate on these things with your friends. Who are your friends? They're the ones that you could do such things with. So thank you, Abuna, for this introduction. This is just to kind of give you a roundabout idea of what this book is about, or who St. Paul was. What I'm here right now in this lecture, or it's not even a lecture, is really to kind of stir your mind in terms of what to anticipate, right? So there's going to be two angles to the approach. The first approach is through the lectures and through the discussions, we're going to answer many questions. And so I'm going to throw some questions out there to you. And this is just so that you can start to look forward to something. First is, what does St. Paul mean to die as Christ? How can something so morbid, to live as Christ, to die as gain? How can something so morbid be something so hopeful to anticipate, to look forward to? What does it mean stop messaging WhatsApp? What does it mean to work out salvation in fear and trembling? What does it mean that nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit is worth it? Who was Epaphroditus? Someone very important. What does it mean that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me when I can't? Right? Sometimes we do things, or we can't do things, and we have this memory verse, and it's so powerful, but we don't, and we can't. What does it mean when we fall short? How can I experience this Christian joy in my life? This retreat is all about rejoice, rejoice, rejoice. But I'm going to go back to a society that is all about the hustle, the bustle, the chase, you need to be better at what you do. You need to continuously do better. This constant chase of this world. What does it mean to always be rejoiceful? And what is this peace that passes all understanding? And these are questions that St. Paul speaks about in Philippians. Right? But what about the questions that we ask ourselves every day internally? Again, these questions of, the church tells me this, or Abuna says this, the priest tells me this, or the servant says this, or my friends tell me this, yet it's not practical and it's not real. And I know many people here are coming not just because it's a retreat and it's a social activity, but because they really want to know the deep meaning behind rejoice. They really want to understand, how can I rejoice? How can I make myself, or what is the difference between joyful and happiness? Because sometimes happiness just fades away. I'm asking all these questions simply to stir our minds to search for this. And my prayer is that we find it, just not to say that we find it at the end of this retreat, but it actually allows us to try to live this for it's a constant work. It's not something that we receive overnight or in a 3-day retreat, but it's something that we can say, you know what, it is tangible, and it is a reality. And St. Paul, that struggled with this in the year 60 or 67, and speaks so confidently about it in his chains, tied to some jailer, or tied to the jailer. He speaks it, and he lives it, and he dies it. How can it be real for me? And so if we can truly, again, maybe just start it on this weekend, I think it takes us back to a city that is not in the same perspective we left it as. That, again, Monday morning we go to work, and we meet our boss, whether we like them or not, and we're able to say, you know what, I am confident, regardless of what takes place today, that it is all in Christ. Regardless, the news, regardless, whatever it is that comes my way. But it's not just me. And this was St. Paul's whole message. That it's not just him. It's Christ in him. And this takes us to your baptism. This baptism that you've experienced, with the exception of Corey, wherever she is. Inside joke. Is that Christ is in us. Christ is in us. Now, on the flip side, I want to ask you, what are your questions, not for me to answer, but that you're coming with for this retreat to fulfill for you? If you're so willing to ask them. But I'm not here to answer them. We're here to answer them throughout the weekend. Abuna and I are at your service on a personal level. But at the same time, I want to hear those questions that are stirring in your mind. Do you see the word rejoice? Are you skeptical of it? Or are you coming to find it? You know, what he means by rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. If you're willing to ask these questions now, just so that, again, we stir our minds with why we're here. And again, I know it's not everyone's purpose for why they're here, but any takers? Amen.
I think one that's very common for a lot of people, I think it's
Is there another mic? No.
the world and times right now facing difficult challenges and very tough, depressing, difficult times. And I think we are overpowered by these surroundings, and it's tough to find joy or kind of seeing past the difficult times and the tough times that we face or we see to even rejoice, if that makes sense. I feel like everybody can understand what I'm saying. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. It's tough to rejoice when you're on the bottom, or it's possible, obviously, and we have pockets of times that we do, but it's difficult because it's an easy slip that we all fall into.
I said I'm not going to answer it.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear Amen? That pretty much I'm here because I want to know how is it that I could rejoice if the world is pretty much overshadowing that message and overshadowing what I know is to be true and right, but again, it's not what is tangible to see. Justin?
To kind of add on to the same idea, like there's that verse that says, "In the world you will have tribulation."
Menortis is completing the verse for
No,
you.
sorry,
That's impressive. That's good.
we get stuck on that tribulation. Like we don't finish the rest of the verse. We don't finish the rest of the idea.
Yes.
And we don't know how to leverage the rest of that verse. Like, but lo, I'm with you. Like in the world you have tribulation, but lo, I'm with you. So we don't understand what the presence of God does for us. So we always focus on the tribulation and get stuck there. So I'm looking forward to hearing more how to leverage the presence of God as a source of joy.
Be of good cheer. Mina?
One thing that I want to
Speak louder. And I could try to get, I don't know if it's going to reach you.
no, it's
It's not. So Mina, sorry, just speak louder.
one thing that I want to know is if joy is something external that I have to get myself, or is it something that it's planted from within? That's something that comes from within.
Excellent. We're not going to answer that question. But check out lecture 2 on your schedule. So is joy something external that I can get? Or is it something internal? Anyone else?
I don't know. Everyone's saying that like joy is hard to find.
Myrna?
Sorry. My question is, why is it easier for people to find joy in places where there's actual tribulation? Like when we look at our brothers and sisters in Egypt, I feel like they easily find joy and know the joy of our faith and Christ. And then I'm here with the freedom of like loving Christ, but Monday through Friday I'm so busy with my job and my life that I don't find that joy that they're finding. And they have harder tribulations than I do. So why is it easier for them to find the joy?
Myrna, what group number are you in?
11.
Oh, very good. Okay. I want to be part of your group. Who else? It's bromance, it's romance, whatever you got. It's all there. Kira. But Kira, just a disclaimer, I'm not answering anything.
I was just thinking of a similar thought. I mean, when I reflect on our situation, I feel like overall we are pretty fortunate, and I almost feel sort of guilty coming to a retreat where I'm thinking of it as kind of a self-help thing. What can I get out of the church and out of God? When I feel like maybe, just maybe, a more effective path to finding joy is through focusing on helping others who need it more, rather than what can I get out of this? Because there are a lot of people out there with a much worse situation than everyone here.
So, are you part of group 11 too?
7, sorry.
7, okay.
You can rotate.
I think you guys can definitely connect though.
I'll join groups.
Mina?
The reason why how can you maintain joy long term throughout all the ups and downs?
Excellent.
What can you repeat?
How can you maintain joy long term through the ups and downs, the valleys and the troughs, right? Excellent. Sorry, I don't know your name. Maggie. Yes. Welcome, Maggie.
The verse in the Bible that says, "Learn from me, for I am gentle." With gentleness comes love and kindness and happiness and joy. So I want to know how to apply that, on others and how to keep peace.
I want to know how to be an instrument of that application of love, joy, peace. Excellent. Okay. Anyone else? Again, why or what questions or what question do you come with to get answered during this?
Are you joyful right now, this time?
You're not asking me, right? I think Kira's asking everyone. Are you joyful right now? Can you be joyful at every moment? Murat?
What's stopping you from reaching that point?
What's preventing you and stopping you? It's lecture 3. Excellent. Monica?
How do I tell the difference between joy and happiness?
Excellent. 2? Lecture 2. Lecture 2. You have to admit, I'm going to get to you, Joe. You have to admit this joy question is a constant one, and it will always be a constant one, and that's why it's such a powerful topic, and it's such an important topic. Not just to have it on a retreat as a theme, but to constantly be reminded of it. That it's a constant work in progress. That it's something that, again, things will knock at me every day, every other day, weekly, monthly, and if you're lucky, yearly maybe, or if you're unlucky, still yearly. But that constant joy is a fight, and it's a struggle. That's why these questions are critical and important, because they're real and very valid. Joe?
After Kiro and Mina's questions, it triggered a thought I had of something I read recently, and it's a question I'm asking myself: is am I a thermometer or am I a thermostat? You know, where does joy come from? Is it, you know, we're in such turbulent times in our society, our culture, our country, in our world. And am I just reacting to all of these things? Am I a thermometer? I'm just reacting to everything around me? Or am I a thermostat? Am I bringing joy to others? And as Kira was saying, am I looking to make an effect, you know, with the Holy Spirit who's within me? Maybe the joy comes from within. So which one am I?
What group number are you?
I'm going to be floating with you. It's a very good question.
Any other hands?
Abuna, can you experience pain and suffering, but still be joyful? Can you still can you experience both?
So Abuna's coming with this question to this retreat, and I'm not answering it. Yes, can you experience joy in pain and suffering and such? Because we're going to experience pain and suffering.
But be joyful at the same time.
Right. Can you?
Do you only know what joy is because of pain?
You got a lot of thumbs up. I see the expressions.
I don't. I just think you're groaning.
I got a lot of...
Ask her what group number she is.
Anything else? I'm persisting on the anything else and asking you for more questions because I want you to hear from each other. Because the more we hear from each other, the more approachable we are towards each other. And the more we're able to kind of break that ice way before it even, the retreat even starts. That we are here for yes, multiple purposes, but one common purpose, which is, again, to understand more, whatever that understanding is. Murat had her hand raised. What's your source of joy?
Very good.
Excellent.
Oh, I want to ask.
Justin was raising his hand first.
So it's more of like because when I think of people who are joyous or people who are happy, like I don't think of myself as someone who's emotionally expressive. So like, does my joy have to look like your joy? Like, can my joy be like somber? Can my joy be like a silent joy?
Can you explain it?
So let's say two people get an A on an exam. One person's ecstatic, the other person's like, yeah, I got an A. That's how it's supposed to be. So does my joy have to be something like, does it have to be a jubilant? Does it have to be like projected outward? Can my joy be personal? Like, does it have to be something that other people see and notice?
I have an answer to this question, but if you don't
You
mind.
really want to answer it?
Maybe the one who is very joyful never get an A before. Bad joke.
Amen.
What if you only find joy in sinning?
In what?
Sinning?
Yeah.
The joy in sinning. That's the retreat down the block.
No, it's actually Abuna.
But that, I don't.
Lecture 2, group number 3.
To be perfectly honest, and I really would like to bring light to that question because I feel
Louder.
some people would try to excuse their pain and suffering and then sinning or an acceptable type of sin is bringing them joy. So it's almost like they're trying to kind of make their own try to provide their own therapy by sinning, and that's what makes them happy.
Yes. Yes. Your name?
Melissa.
Hi, Melissa.
Just to add on to that, I think that brings the question of what does joy look like and what is true joy? And you're right, if you can feel joy out of, sinning, then how can we tell the difference? What is the difference? Is there a difference? Or is it the same type of joy that we're experiencing?
Notice? We're not answering, right?
Oh, okay.
You sound like you're about to answer.
I want to share a distinction. According to psychology, joy and happiness are wonderful feelings to experience, but are very different. Joy is more consistent and is cultivated internally. It comes when you make peace with who you are and why you are and how you are, whereas happiness tends to be externally triggered and is based on other people, things, places, thoughts, and events.
Okay, we were not going to answer any questions tonight.
You just skipped my lecture. You just destroyed it now.
Sorry, guys. Spoiler alert.
Jackie?
He's not in my group.
Loud.
Are there levels to joy? Like, is there like a very high level of joy where it kind of surpasses understanding? It's, I guess, like a supernatural joy that exists. Is that something that we work towards?
Monica?
Can joy and fear coexist?
Okay. Marat?
I was going to say, speaking of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, are you happy or are you joyful when you're alone, or do you really know well, I guess that goes along with, what joy is versus happiness, but are you joyful when you're alone? And I go back to the source of the question.
Okay. So you guys get it, right? And again, the prayer and the hope is that in the coming, the next 2 days, we will be able to answer all of these questions. And I think we did a good job at identifying which lectures would be the ones to answer them. Your discussion groups are there also to speak and to hear each other out. And they will be facilitated by your group leader. There's so much to learn from just this one book. There's so much to learn from the ministry of St. Paul and his powerful ministry. There's so much to learn. When I mentioned the two families between Lydia and the jailer, and Lydia was a powerful woman. She funded his mission work. She funded him. And for sometimes we hear of a misogynistic church and this and that. Look at Lydia, who was able to again support such a powerful leader, such as St. Paul. And the jailer, an unfaithful, unbeliever person who can be converted, just like St. Paul was converted from being an actual killer of. And we have to see ourselves in these people. And we have to understand again what he means by rejoice. That someone who was holding coats for the Jewish leaders to stone Stephen and such can be turned into such a tender, loving, forgiving, powerful man. That, again, goes beyond time. I mean, it's now almost 2,000 years from when he died. But yet, as Abuna mentioned, his mission work, we talk about his 4 mission trips. It wasn't 4 mission trips. It's what was documented. But he had 30 plus years of mission work, of going from this place tireless. And if he gets jailed, or if he gets shipwrecked, or gets lashed, or stoned, or whatever it is, he still is constant, because there is something in him that is supernatural. So I encourage you again to read the book tonight. That way you have a general idea of the message of the book.